My question is, at the level of psychological significance of these stories, at the level of mythology and archetype, how is Islam so different from the Judeo-Christian tradition?
What I see as the failure to separate church from state, and that's a problem. It's certainly a problem in relationship to the relation between Islam and the West, because we separate church from state. It's not only an idea that's rooted in Islam that those should be united, but it's definitely a problem with regards to our coexistence, because that's a fundamentally different presumption.
One of the most profound speakers of our generation is the great Jordan Peterson. Here he is talking about the different narratives between Islam and Christianity and the dangers of radical Islam. Let's listen to what he has to say in this incredible lecture. And of course, I want to hear what you have to say about it. So don't forget to leave your comments below. And of course, subscribe to this channel, and we'll talk to you on the other end of the video.
In your comments, there's this common theme that one of these things is not like the other. You put the Judeo-Christian tradition on the one side and Islam on the other. Specifically the, quote, complex problem of Islam and the, quote, as a, quote, totalizing system. And before I go further, let me state that if hypothetically a final analysis of Islam resulted in as total a denunciation as your analysis of postmodernism or neo-Marxism, I wouldn't be personally offended at all. This isn't a personal question. In your recent interview with Ayaan Hirsi Ali, she said, Western values are superior to Islamic law and Islamic values. I agree with that, basically, certainly in the context of, let's say, current global affairs. I'll skip the quotes from a Reason magazine interview, but you should read them, because hers is a worldview which is very much the West versus Islam, not radical Islam, but Islam, including necessarily the military option. So my question is, at the level of psychological significance of these stories, at the level of mythology and archetype, how is Islam so different from the Judeo-Christian tradition? You know, because Adam, Eve, Havva, Satan, Shaitan, so on and so forth, everything from the fall to the flood, a lot of what you discuss in this lecture series is necessarily part of Islam as well. And in fact, I think one of the strongest criticisms of Islam is that it's perhaps pretty unoriginal. You know, tonight you said that the moral presuppositions of a culture are instantiated in its stories. I see a lot of the same stories. So current global affairs aside, I'm asking at the deepest levels, how different are these stories and the moral presuppositions?
Okay, well, that's a killer question. Well, okay, so the first thing I would say is, fundamentally, I don't know. And so part of the reason that one of the things I'm planning to do is to have a series of discussions, and plenty of people have contacted me about discussing with Ayaan Hirsi Ali, because as you know, she has powerful and serious foes, and they're not happy with her black and white distinction. And so, now I read Infidel, and I really liked that book. Like my sense was that she was a heroine. Now, what that means in relationship to Islam, that's a different story, because she came out of a totalitarian, let's say, family structure in a relatively totalitarian society. And you could make the case that there's a correspondence between that and Islam, and you could make the case that there isn't. And of course, that's the critical issue. And so, there's a couple of things that I can't wrap my head around easily in relationship to Islam. And so one is what I see as the failure to separate church from state. And that's a problem. Now, it may not be a problem as such, but it's certainly a problem in relationship to the relation between Islam and the West, because we separate church from state. Now, there's fundamentalists in the United States, Christian fundamentalists, who think that that separation is a mistake. So it's not only an idea that's rooted in Islam that those should be united, but it's definitely a problem with regards to our coexistence, because that's a fundamentally different presumption. Okay, so that's problem number one. Problem number two for me, and again, this may be a consequence of my ignorance, which I'm trying to rectify, Muhammad was a warlord. And I don't know what to do about that fact. Like, one thing you can say about Christ, hypothetically, let's say, I'm not talking about a historical reality necessarily, although I'm not denying it either, is that of all the things he was, warlord was definitely not one of them. And I don't know what to do about that. And so I don't know how to reconcile that. And I don't know how to reconcile, like, not only was Muhammad a warlord, which I don't think is an unreasonable thing to proclaim, the expansion that he initiated was unbelievably successful. I mean, within 600 years, it was the biggest empire the world had ever seen. And it demolished Byzantine Christianity, which is something that Western people don't even know. You know, I've read thinkers who said that the West was so traumatized, culturally, let's say, by the demolition of Byzantine Christianity, that we can't even study it now. And so, I don't know if that's true, but I don't know that it's not true either. And the Buddhists were wiped out of Afghanistan, and we saw that echoed in the Taliban's destruction of those great Buddhist monuments. And so what I'm hoping is that there's a bridge. There better be a bridge. And that's why I want to have these discussions, because I'd like to understand if there's a bridge. And so lots of people have sent me people who I should talk to, who they think represent Islam far better than Ayaan Hirsi Ali. And perhaps they're correct, and hopefully I'll get an opportunity to talk to them, because I would like to know why. I would like to know if what I think is wrong. Because if it's wrong, it's important that I know it's wrong. But at the moment, I don't know it's wrong, and B, I don't see I'm not sure what it signifies. So, and I don't think anyone is sure, right? Because we have this entangling of the civilizations.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the great Jordan Peterson, a conservative psychologist from Canada. He's one of my heroes in the world today. There's very few conservative psychologists like myself, and I've really learned a lot from many of his books, his writings, and especially his incredible videos. He keeps on fighting a battle against all of Western psychology and Western philosophy. But here he is talking about the difference between the nascent narratives between religions. We have a Jewish narrative, we have the Christian narrative, and the holidays we celebrate. Then we have the Islamic narrative. The mayor of New York, Mamdani, just quoted a scene called the Hijra, where Muhammad, to start political Islam, had to leave Medina. He had to leave Mecca, go to Medina. And in Medina, he actually starts political Islam by murdering people, cutting off their heads. And he actually murdered 3 Jewish families, 3 whole Jewish tribes in the place called Medina. And that's a remarkable story, the tremendous violence in Islam. And the fact that the Quran is filled with so many horrific comments about Jews and anti-Semitism, and it preaches the destruction of the Jews and the destruction of the Christians, and the actual dhimmi status that was given to Jews and Christians being second and third class citizens. You know, when religion starts like that, when a culture begins with violence, with hatred, with domination, it helps us understand what's happening in the world today. And since 9/11, there's been 48,000 acts of Islamic terror around the world. How many acts of Jewish or Christian terror are perpetrated around the world, in countries around the world? Almost none. It's specific to Islam, its level of violence. I would say, from my perspective, its understanding of monotheism is wonderful. It's actually closer to the Jewish people. But when it comes to violence and subjugation, it seems to rule, whether it was 9/11, where Islamic terrorists, in the name of Islam, murdered over 3,000 people, taking down 2 towers. And I was actually right there, right in front of it when it happened. Or the Bondi Beach massacre in the first day of Hanukkah, or the Muslim attack against a synagogue in Manchester, and the list goes on and on and on and on, all around the world. And of course, Hamas, funded by the Muslim Brotherhood, and Iran, that went into Israel on October 7th, murdered over 1,200 people, wounded 7,000 for life, took 251 people hostage in Gaza terror tunnels. They took the money from the West when Israel left Gaza. They took billions of dollars, built 300 miles of terror tunnels, planted weapons factories under schools, under nursery schools, under hospitals, and fired thousands and thousands of missiles aimed at civilians. Civilians in Israel are Muslims or Jews, they're Christians. Each missile is a weapon of mass destruction, can murder hundreds or thousands of people. Islamic culture run by Sharia is a murderous culture. Look what happened in Gaza, the murder of all their homosexual individuals there, the LGBT community, Christians and Jews. Jews were not allowed to live there. In fact, Jews are not allowed to live in many Muslim countries. And it's unfortunate we see the violence perpetrated against almost every society where Muslims go. They tend to destroy the societies. They tend to destroy Christian communities. Look at Lebanon. Look at Egypt. Egypt, a number of years ago, was mostly a Coptic Christian community. Look at Lebanon in the 1960s. About 65 or 70% of all of Lebanon were Christians. And today, 10% of the Lebanese population is Christian today. Most Christians had to flee when the Muslims took over the country. Most Christians have been destroyed or burnt to death, or there were suicide attacks against the Coptic Christians in Egypt. Israel is actually the only place where Jews, Christians, and Muslims can vote and be free. Muslims in this country are given equal rights. They're given the right to vote. They're given the right to serve in the parliament. There's many members of parliament. There's Supreme Court justices that have been Muslim, accountants, doctors. Many of the Israeli hospitals are filled with Muslim doctors, trained by Israel, trained by Jewish money from around the world. And it's remarkable, but Jews are not allowed the same rights to own any land in Jordan. It's against the law. They can't own any land in Egypt, can't own any land in Syria, Iraq, Iran, where people are persecuted and prosecuted for just being who they are. So we see this tremendous disparity that under Islamic rule, minorities are not allowed to have any right. Most of them are murdered, subjugated. Many of them have been turned into slaves of these countries. Many of them are not even allowed to leave if they're living there without threat of being killed. And therefore, we understand that culture of Islam, the narrative of it, is one of tremendous destructiveness in societies they go to. And so we have to listen very carefully what Jordan Peterson has to say. He's worried. He's concerned about the narrative that clashes with Judeo-Christian civilization. That Judeo-Christian civilization, what we'll call biblically informed civilization, created England, created France, created Europe, created America, created Canada, created Australia, some of the greatest societies, the most free societies, the most giving societies in human history. And of course, the great American Constitution, which separated between church and state, which is exactly in opposition to the culture of Islam, which talks about domination, which talks about the spread of Sharia law, where there's no separation. People are not truly free under Islam. But I'd like to hear what you have to say about this. Don't forget to leave your comments below. And of course, subscribe to this great channel, and we'll talk to you in future videos.